Welcome, everyone. My guest today is Lead Analyst Logan Mohtashami to talk about those very big job revisions and what that means for Fed rate cuts, and the ambitious housing plans proposed by Vice President Harris. Logan, welcome back to the podcast.
It is wonderful to have you back. Missed you. I know you were on vacation, but even if I'm in Spain or Antigua, I always find a way to get to the podcast. But for you, it's okay to take a week off.
Oh, I appreciate that. I needed the week off, but I missed it. I'm ready to be back. So we have a ton of things to talk about today. So of course we have this whole plan. I wanted to, and we will get to it. We're going to talk about the Harris, some of the housing plans that she has. Wanted to talk through those with you. But then this morning, we're recording this on Wednesday. We had this big job, news. So talk us through that. What happened?
So everybody's been anticipating this negative revisions report, and it came in at 818,000 jobs taken back from the previous data lines. Now, I'm going to have to explain this in a way that more kind of works with my own labor data. I have been wrong on the jobs data for some time because I naturally said, and we detailed this out all the way back, going to 2020 with the COVID-19 recovery, that once we start getting above 157 million and we're heading toward 159 million employment, this is the non-farm payroll. It's about 80% of the workforce. The job growth should naturally slow down to about 140 to 165,000. This is assuming that the Fed isn't too overly aggressive in shrinking the economy, but it wasn't working, and we were getting closer to 159 million. And I was thinking, if this doesn't work, and for anybody who tracks data, you always know you're going to get revisions to everything. So you have to wait for the revisions. And right now with the revisions, we're at 175,000. So it looks
175,000
per month, right?
Okay.
Taking the 818,000 right. So for me, it looks more normal. For the Fed, though, who has constantly said the labor market is too tight, wages are too strong, too many people working, you're living too high. Attack the labor supply. Attack the labor supply. Attack the labor supply. They got nowhere to cover anymore right now, right? Not to mention 45,000 construction jobs out. And we just highlighted, we've been talking about labor in the construction field for some time now. And we talked about, does the Fed need housing back to make sure that the residential construction workers don't lose their job? It's not just Home Depot warning. Lowe's also warned about the remodeling. So rate cut cycle is starting. It's now a question of how fast do they get to neutral? Because if you're assuming a neutral policy now, let's just say 6 to 8 rate cuts, depending on who you want to talk to, that still implies that the labor market isn't breaking. So if the labor market is breaking, what are they doing now? They've lost that cover that they had. And for those who might not know, it's 2022. Fed spiked the eggnog. We said the Fed is not going to pivot until the labor market breaks. It's definitely softening more than they thought. Now we get down to this 380 level. So we're talking on Wednesday. The last time I checked, we're at 3.79. So to break under 380, you're going to need more material labor data weakness. So here we are, we're at 379, and we've already shaved off over 800,000 jobs. They cannot do their Mickey Mouse act anymore. Bowman can't come on a speech president and say, I'm worried about upside inflation. Neil Kashkari can't go smirking and going, my gut tells me no. Oh, the whole game's over. Okay, so switch, and let's talk about being extremely more dovish and contemplating. My Lord, just contemplate this, that if the labor market does break, is neutral policy where you even want to go? So that's why I've always said that the Fed doesn't pivot, because even if they cut rates 3 times already this year, they would still have restrictive policy. So now we could start to having that. Now the pressure can come on. These are human beings. I mean, these aren't tough guys either. They will feel the pressure. right? These are academics. When all of a sudden everyone's looking at you and you're thinking, oh, my job data wasn't as strong as I thought, the pressure hits.
So this was my question. You have, we've got Fed meeting. I'm sorry, Jerome Powell speaking at this event, right, on Friday. We already thought, okay, he's going to lay the groundwork for a September cut. With this kind of, big revision, does he have to rewrite his thing, be more aggressive?
I mean, the Fed anticipated this, so I don't think that changes it. But I would tell you this. To me, the Fed really moves off of jobless claims data, and it's going to be even more apparent now that they need to be a little bit more careful saying that the labor market is strong or stuff, or implying that there's no risk to the economy, and they don't have much leeway left anymore. We always talk about the run rate, right? How you need to create a lot of jobs just to keep the unemployment rate at bay. They're losing that argument as well. So they put themselves in this position. So we're going to have to give them as much grief as possible. And so, of course, Jerome Powell is going to lay the groundwork for the rate cut. But I think we've now moved into the okay. Do you think you could keep the economy going by slowly moving to neutral? And when do you actually pull the trigger on pushing to accommodative? That's kind of like the discussion that we should be having now. Is the pivot is okay? We go to neutral. We're going to go there, but if you really saw the labor market breaking, you're like, hey, listen, we have to do more to keep the economy going to an accommodative stance.
So
I mean, it's got to be at least 12 to 16 rate cuts at that point if you're losing jobs month in and month out. So for right now, they have time. They could change this. They could have changed this last year.
right.
They could have done it and just moved along, but there's a price to pay when you're old and slow. So this is the way it is. Thankfully, the bond market gets ahead of the Fed, and this time they have a little bit more credibility in getting ahead of the Fed, unlike 2022 to 2023. So hopefully this is a great wake up call. Just like think about the coldest ice water with tons of ice, and every Fed president just gets splashed in the face. Like, okay, wake up, McFly. Hello. What you doing? So that's
So
I think in that context, it's a positive going forward. But the game has changed in that sense that they've lost their biggest cover for now.
So you think we're at 50 basis point cut in
No,
September?
the Fed doesn't. This Fed hasn't operated that way. I know Bostic talked about a 50 basis possibly, but to me, they've highlighted the jobless claims data so much that it's way too smart of a move to do that. So I'm not expecting it. You're asking me to believe in people that we've always said are going to be behind the curve just by the nature of how the institution is. So, but again, for everyone listening, it's the 10-year yield that matters more. Why, Sarah?
It's the
That's
slow
slow
dance.
dance.
Yes.
That's slow dance. It's so funny. There's people out there that said the Fed can't cut rates because home prices will go. Guys, I hate to break it to you. The Fed does not revolve its dual mandate around existing home prices. Because you have a crappy newsletter and a garbage YouTube account and a terrible Twitter thing, that's not how it works, right? The history of nominal home prices, if majority it's been growing, right? It's not their mandate. If the economy is weakening, people are losing jobs. Could you imagine Jerome Powell said on TV, we're not going to cut rates because some trashy YouTube person says that home prices could go up? And no, that's not how it works. So labor data runs the show now. Labor data softer, not breaking yet. Breaking claims go up there. They can change this, right? I'm just waiting to be surprised to the upside for once on this. But thankfully, they lost their cover. Because, if they didn't lose their cover, they were just going to sit here and, Bostic was going to go. Bostic went from, we could discuss a rate cut. We could do 50 basis points. These people are so fidgety. Oh my God, they go from one thing to another within days, but they have enough time. They have time. They can do this, but thankfully, the 10-year yield is not at 5%, and you can land the plane. You can land the plane and just go for it. It's going to
So
be okay.
we will be keeping an eye on that, and our next podcast is actually on Friday, so we will have some news from Jackson Hole and from that speech at that time. But let's get to what we wanted to talk about, what we were planning on, which was some pretty big housing plans from the Harris campaign. So I will tell you this, and I know, I've talked to a lot of people that are like, "There's no way these things are going to happen." Whatever. From a news perspective, from someone in the housing, covering housing, it's nice to see housing make the main stage at the DNC last night. Barack Obama came out. It was like, we have to do something. We have to. It's basically like build, baby, build, right? So I want to talk to you about what you think about these two plans. So from the Harris campaign, we've seen two major things. One is giving homeowners $25,000 to help with down payment. And the second is that we need to incentivize builders to build millions of homes. So would love to take both of those on and give us your Logan take.
14 years of work has now led up to this conversation.
Okay.
Um, I do not believe as a country we build to oversupply housing. I've always stated that in the last decade, said that, the builders never underbuilt because the builders only build to make money. So here, remember in 2021, right in the middle of the hottest part of the housing market, somebody wrote an article that says we can't build our way out of this. And I encourage everyone. Sarah
That
would
was
never let
you.
me write.
You wrote that article.
Yeah, Sarah would never let me write this article again because there's too many charts and it's too long, and they're going to go, "What am I going to do with this?" It's too. Yeah, you're right. Probably they're never going to let me. But if you Google why can't we build our way out of this hot housing market, there is a lot of data in that, and we sit here today. If an alien came and visited us and asked, "You guys are talking about building millions of more homes?" Yes. Well, your housing starts are at recession levels. Your permits are at recession levels. Existing home sales are at the lowest levels ever recorded in history. And the new home sales market is below the tech recession levels. Where's your demand? Sarah Wheeler, I'm the alien. Where is your demand?
The demand is coming from people who would like to buy but are on the sidelines. That would be the and maybe especially first time home buyers. That's why we're looking at the down payment assistance. And so you tell me.
And that is the interesting aspect, because I think they realize that you don't just put your head down and build, right? I mean, look at the builders, or builders have already pulled back to recession levels on permits, and single family permits are falling. So you're going to have to do the supply and demand equilibrium together. Now, I'm never a fan of, the housing market is already subsidized enough. So you're adding more into the equation. But the truth is, if new home sales don't pick up, the builders aren't going to sit there and just start building homes like crazy and having them pile up on the completed units of sales. That's just not how they run business. Now, we talked about the government could come in and just pay them. Here, we'll buy the house. I don't know if they'll ever think about it that way, but the builders, I don't care who pays me. I'll take it. But in this context, they're trying to do both. So at least there's a plan there about something. Supply is the best way to deal with inflation. So anything that helps building, pushes building, is A plus in my book. The stimulus plan, the 25,000 tax credit, in 2010, the home buyer tax credit, which I wasn't a fan of, but what it did is that there was a lot of inventory. There was not a lot of demand going. It boosted sales up for like just a very short time, and then demand collapsed. So all it did is bring forward demand in, and so that really didn't achieve anything. You get that kind of stimulus plan in this kind of market with lower rates, sales are going up. So it's a very difficult problem because I don't believe as a country we tend to want to oversupply anything because that the profit margins of companies will just dwindle. So in this context, I don't see us building that many homes, but if you can get any kind of production increase, anything, it's an A plus
Right.
in my book. So I'm glad that the supply discussion was there. As ambitious as it was, it's still there. And anything that pushes toward that is a good thing. But I'm very skeptical about a lot of single family homes being built and new home sales not growing, right? It's just not the case. I mean, already, the total completed units for sales, 100,000. It's not a lot in the big scale of things when you have over 146 million total units in America, but just getting above there has
Right.
halted housing permits and starts to recessionary levels. That's
So
the problem. That's the equilibrium problem of this. And it's been a big part of my work in the last decade, in this decade, and even in the craziest, hottest period in 2021. That's what I decided to write because I know one day you and I were going to have this discussion about this. And now the government has put a plan because we said the federal government is going to have to do some deficit financing, something. Something had to happen. So here it is. We're having this conversation that we laid the groundworks in 2021 for. And still, to me, it is anything's a positive if it's talked about on the production side. I'm all for that.
Well, and I agree with you on that. So, specifically, the Harris plan calls for 3 million homes to be built, and it's giving tax incentives to builders. But it's, what she wants them to build is starter homes that are then sold to first time homeowners. So this is where it gets complicated, right? Because you and I know that's a very prescriptive kind of like you can only build these kind of homes. Well, how much is that tax incentive going to be to make sure that they're actually making money on a home that's a starter home? The reason they don't do starter homes right now is building costs are so high. You've got a lot of a lot of regulations and things that make it difficult. So you build a starter home, you're not making the money that you if you do even a move up home or a luxury home.
Sarah, what is a starter home?
That is a great question. That is a great question, Logan Mohtashami. Obviously, a starter home is different for different people and at different times. A 1950s starter home, what we would consider a starter home was probably their home. They didn't think of it as like, this is my starter home. It was just their home. And now we look at those and we're like, oh, they're like 1,200 square feet. That seems like a starter home.
Some people could make the case that a condo is a starter home.
Yeah, that's true.
And there are markets out there that are having condo stress because the insurance costs are going up higher. And, again, anything the government can do to help construction of housing, I'm all for. Okay. I'm just trying to temper the, people's expectation because I've heard about all these great plans and it's just, to me, you still need the supply and demand equilibrium to work. So it is a positive, an unbelievable positive that we're talking about supply. But it is also the reality of the world that we live in that the builders just aren't going to put their heads down.
Right.
You need to have, and this is why the problem with having rates high enough, long enough, that you've got yourself in a situation where housing starts at recessionary levels. So think about it in this way. During the housing bubble years, how did the builders build all those homes? Like, how did that happen? Apparently, we don't have enough labor. But how did they build all those homes? Well, God, new home sales went up to 1.4 million. The demand was there. They will build. They miraculously always find. I mean, the builders have been complaining about labor for 10 years. 10 years. I remember all the way in 2013, 14. We don't have enough labor. We have enough. Oh my God, we're still building homes. Miraculously, as new home sales grow, they build. So you got to have the demand equation in there. And then I could feel a little bit more comfortable. So got to have both. So don't put all your eggs in the supply basket. Don't put all your eggs in the demand basket. Find an equilibrium, and anything positive is good out there. But I'm glad we're talking about supply and not giving $400 checks to people to make housing affordable. So something going out in the future, good. But zoning rule stuff, There's a lot of things that can be done, but there's also the reality of the world we live in.
It's what we've been talking about for the last year, Logan, you and I, which is there is only so much that the federal government can do from that level, right? So if they're incentivizing the builders to do that, that's great. The builders still have to work within the constraints of the communities, the cities, the counties, the HOAs, wherever they're building, where it's like maybe they don't want starter homes, maybe they don't want that
Well,
floor
the
plan.
environmental groups.
The environmental groups, they face
Yes.
a lot of things. Let's talk about the number. Let's talk about the 3 million number. So, from your perspective, given how we've said that we're missing some homes, right? Like, what is the number in your opinion of supply? What's that magic number?
So the problem is that majority of home buyers buy existing homes.
Right.
So if you're telling me you need to do an additional 750,000 homes, you're going to need more buyers. Now, naturally, these are not all going to be single family homes. They're going to be apartment complexes, of course, multi units. That's fine. So again, you can throw any number out there. You're going to need the demand to go with it. So I don't see where mortgage rates are right now to the demand to warrant that kind of building expansion. Unless we want to tell the builders, hey, listen, we'll buy the house. I don't care if you have. We won't let. See, think about it in this way. We're doing this in the oil market. Maybe not a lot of people know this, but the government is basically telling the oil companies, hey, keep on producing. Whenever oil gets down to 67, 72, go look at the charts, people. It's really obvious. The oil just doesn't break. Government comes in, steps in, and buys. They got a willing buyer out there. Here, we're building a house. So you know what, government, we don't have the demand here. Our complete units are picking up. Can you buy some of these? But then see if somebody told me that, then I go, okay, there's a buyer there. So um, on the multifamily unit side, you can do a lot of stuff. You could do a lot of stuff in that department. On the single family side, that's the builder's bread and butter. They're not going to just do it. They need to make sure that the buyers are there.
I don't know anything about the oil market, so I appreciate that context. You're correct. It's one of the things we've been talking about. Like you, I'm excited that people are talking, both parties talking
Yeah,
about housing supply, about what we can do. Finally, the Main Street pain has reached, up all the ways to
yeah.
the
And
halls of government.
that's a good point. I mean, this is the reality. The reality. This is the third calendar year of the lowest home sales ever recorded history. I mean, if you want to get as close to a depressionary sales levels, even though you're going to have near 5 million total home sales, this would kind of be it. Right here. So uh, the supply and demand equilibrium has to work in both ways. Of course, lower mortgage rates helps out. The incentives help out. We have to be a little bit more realistic on how much single family homes. And let's be honest here. Nobody wants to say this, but I will. People that make money don't live in apartments.
Yeah.
Families. I mean, you could, of course, wealthy people in New York or but in realistically, you buy a single family home because you want to live there and you create families. We can adjust how we construct apartments, to fit a family better. That I think that could be a positive trend going out. But the reality is the people that buy homes in this country who make money love single family homes. And if we're trying to push more single family
Right.
construction, we're going to need new home sales to grow. And the new home sales market is this small marketplace compared to the existing home sales marketplace. So you need demand to grow for this to work out, because I just don't believe the builders are just going to sit there and keep on building and letting the completed units for sale go up. So there has to be both. But again, a positive that we are talking about supply. Supply is the way to do this out there.
Okay, well, let's talk about the demand side, about the 25,000. So when Biden, I believe it was at the inauguration or very soon after when he came in, he had a first time homebuyer tax credit. He also had a first generation homebuyer tax credit. This is, so this $25,000 idea is not new. At the time, we were like, it just feels like it's dead in the water. There's just no way to do it. So let's talk a little bit about that part.
Well, it's very simple. This is the third calendar year of the lowest home sales ever. Yeah, you need demand up. So, I mean, I would argue that lower rates are probably a little bit more efficient way to do it than, putting it, because whenever you put a stimulus plan right away, you're giving dollars. The velocity of money is just more, right? So you can pay your whatever buyer agents commissions, pay down rates, closing costs, down payment. Yeah. I mean, even during the housing bubble crash years, I encourage everyone, go back to 2010. You can see it. We just shot up in sales, right? That was a little bit more a timed first, a timed tax credit, I believe. So you can get demand to pick up. Not being at the kind of the multi-decade average of inventory makes me nervous about that, because if rates fall and you put this, then we always say that when inventory falls, when the mortgage buyer comes into the equation. This is a mortgage buyer, so it can bring inventory down. Now, I'm happy about 2024 more than anything because the active inventory is growing, right? I
Right.
wasn't one of these scaredy kids running around here. Oh my God, home prices are going to crash 30, 40%. So inventory growing is the positive side. So we can handle lower rates. I'm a little bit nervous about lower rates and then this together. But again, this is what happens when you have the third calendar year of the lowest home sales and people are like this, hey, people want to buy homes, right? This is what we do in this country. And it finally got, as we've talked about, when you keep restrictive policy for so long, people start to complain and then you get the government involved. So not my cup of tea to do that, but I am sympathetic to the view that people just say, hey, listen, it's expensive money out there. And, with the growth rate of inflation falling and wage growth falling, you know, uh, home buyers need an extra hand. Not how I would operate, but I understand it. They need that demand to grow. If you want housing construction, you need new home sales to grow. So this is the situation we're in. We're going to have to deal with it. Again, what anybody proposes right now may never come to fruition, but I'm just glad that the supply discussion is happening more and more, and we just take it from there.
Okay, so one more thing about going back to the labor market and the revisions, because something that you talk about every single week on the tracker, right? You're looking at what's going on, and then every time we get a jobs report, you're looking at what happens with the construction workers, because that has not just implications for builders, but for the larger economy with a recession. So, what did we find out with these revisions on that?
Well, I mean, just reading the headline, 45,000 construction jobs were taken out. So you're going to have to break that down to see if that's residential, non-residential. Again, we have a lot of AI data centers being built right now. That's kind of
Right.
off the charts, but we want to keep this very simple. Single family permits are falling. 5-unit permits are at recession lows. Housing starts at very much recession lows. Permits are at recession lows. We have been keeping employment going on because of the backlog and the timeline to finish a project. But you would normally be losing jobs right now. So why is
Mm.
that? Because demand. Now, the builders have done their best by paying down rates and keeping new home sales from like falling anymore. We've not even broken below the 2022 lows. The forward-looking builder confidence data has gotten slightly better in the last 2 months. I know Toll Brothers announced and said that their traffic is better in August. So um, you're going to. I mean, it's really simple. You just need demand to pick up if you want more construction. I mean, the builders are just not. They're not going to. The monthly supply is too high, and once that backlog is over with, that's it. They're going to start laying off. So 45,000 construction jobs were lost. If you break that down, especially in the next jobs report, we're going to get a cleaner look at all this. But this is what we highlighted while you were gone. We talked about this as, does the Fed need housing back? Every traditional economic cycle that we've had in recent history, residential people lose their jobs first, but this is the first time where single family permits are falling, multifamily permits are falling, but the remodeling jobs, okay, that's a big one. Home Depot warned, Lowe's warned. We have everything. This is the McFly. Hello, Hello, Fed presidents. Come on now. Don't think that you live in an ivory tower and none of us can see the data. We all can see. You are not, out there. It's really interesting because Bostic said that we don't follow our old models because COVID really ruined everything. So we have to rely on sources. Call up every single builder, small builder you have. Don't call some CEO up. Call the smaller. Let the data holes find out when, because once those things are finished building, they don't need them right now. So push it. The growth rate of inflation has fallen. Wage growth has fallen. Labor data has fallen. Take us to the other side. Land the plane.
Land the plane. Logan, thank you so much for being on. Thanks for talking about all of these different issues. We will catch up again soon.
Yes, and it's good to have you back. And I
Oh,
pretty much know you'll never let me write that paper ever again because there was way too many charts and it was way too long. And I encourage everyone, just Google my name, 2021, why can't we build out of this hot housing market? There is a lot of historical data there going back decades out there. And just always remember, everyone, there's like 200,000 to 300,000 teardowns that we do because we have a lot of old housing stock out there. That's got to be part of the discussion as well.
I think what people don't understand, Logan, is that a lot of times for your articles, you start at like 5,000 words. You're very prolific. You can write very fast. You write a ton of things. You have a ton of charts, and then you have to like whittle
And then
those
you
down.
axe it. You just go,
That's my job.
no, nobody reads like that anymore. Go away.
Nobody's going to read your 5,000 word opus, even if it's really good. So, but you have grown so much in that. I mean, you do a lot of that now. When you give something to me, it's not 5,000 words. So, anyway, yeah, but that is a really good article. It just is long.
Yes, I know.
All right,
I'm an
we'll
old
talk
soul.
soon. Bye.